Hi everyone, Jeremy here from Davinci Studio. In this video, I'll show you some of the assets inside of the history pack and how to use them. This pack contains over 150 assets across 12 different categories, so obviously I will not be able to go through every single asset, but I'll give you a good overview of each of the categories and the functionality built in. So if you're ready, let's jump right into it. Alright, so once you get the pack, you will get this zip file. Just double click on it to unzip it. It will give you this folder. In the folder, you have a couple of things. You got the license, the installation instruction, the TFX file to install, and the font. Please make sure to install all the font, otherwise the title will not work because Davinci will not know what font to use. To install the font, just select all of them and then double click on them to start the installation process. Once that's done, you can go over to the TFX file and double click on it to prompt open that pop-up and select install. Once in Davinci Resolve, you will be able to find the asset in two places. Some are going to be in title and some are going to be in effects. Let's start with the title. Here I'm going to go under Davinci Studio and I'm going to scroll all the way down until I found the history pack right here. So I'm going to expand that section, and as you can see, we have a bunch of different categories we can choose from. In title, there is 11 categories you can choose from. There is backgrounds, chapter cards, typographies, clean motion, pointers, loaders, time and dates, lists, timelines, infographics, and compositions, as well as an extra category that is in effect. So that's 12 categories in total. I'm going to go through each of those categories in a second, but first a general note on all of the assets inside of the pack. First off, here I'm just going to drag a random one. They can be extended and reduced as much as needed. They will work with any frame rate, so you can use them in a 24 FPS timeline, a 60 FPS timeline, or 120 FPS timeline, for example. They will work for horizontal timelines as well as vertical timelines. If I copy this and I go to a vertical one, here we go. As you can see, it's working as well for a vertical format. Sometimes some might be exceeding the border of the frame, so you can just go over to size and position and then just reduce them so it fits perfectly your vertical timeline. Just a quick caveat though, some of the assets have been designed with a horizontal frame in mind. So for example, if we take this chapter card, as you can see, we got stuff on the left and we got stuff on the right. If we bring something like this inside of a vertical timeline, first off, as you can see, they are poking out of the frame, and even then, if we try to reduce them, for example, because they've been designed as horizontal, it's not necessarily the best design to be used for a vertical. You would need to choose, for example, to have only one of those elements. So here, what you could do for something like that is, for example, deleting the text on the right and then only using the lower third for this one. Now, regarding usability and playback, something to keep in mind in terms of usability and playback is that some assets are going to be heavier than others. For example, if we take this one, it's playing back fine. We're not getting any drop frame because it's a simple text animation. But as soon as we're getting into infographic territories, well, we're going to drop a few frames because there is just a lot more stuff going on, and the functionality that have been built in are also heavier to playback. One way to have a smooth workflow is to use right here in playback, run the cache. So here, switch run the cache from none to smart. It will just bring over your title that red bar that will turn from red to blue. And when it has been turned fully blue, that means that the title has been caching and you will get real-time playback. So now, as you can see, the cache has been rendered, and now if I play it, we're getting smooth playback with no drop frame. One quick note is that if you make any modification to the title gonna need to be recached. So just make all the modification that you need, then let it cache, and then you should be able to play it without any issue. So here, as you can see, if I'm switching from 5 ring to 3 ring, well, it needs to be recached right now. So just make all the modification and then you can move on. Now, in terms of functionality for all of the assets in this pack, you will find some common parameter. So for example, all of them gonna have some animation control. It may vary depending on the title, but you're generally gonna be able to adjust the timing of the animation as well as the type of the animation and the intensity. And then they will have their own specific parameter like the text, size, position, color, so on and so forth. I will be digging deeper into this as I'm presenting you the asset in the pack. Now, the last thing that I want to share with you before we're going through the entire pack is to use power bins. If there is some asset that you're reusing a lot across multiple videos, well, you can just save those changes in your power bins so you don't have to readjust everything. For example, here, if chapter 1, you're having a specific text instead right here. So you select your font. Let's say you're using another font, using Poppin, and then you want to have Davinci Resolve instead, okay? What you can do now is go over to your media pool. Then here, if you don't have your power bin activated, just select those dots, show power bin, and it will just bring that new power bin section in your media pool. Now, if you click master here, you could, for example, create a new bin. So we could create here animation history pack. And now I could just drag here the title and bring it here in my power bin. Now, this title that you've customized will be shared across all of the project in your libraries. And then you can just drag it directly from the media pool to your timeline in any project, and it will be already customized as you wanted it. So that's a quick tip that I will highly encourage you to apply if you are reusing asset often across multiple videos. Now, with all that out of the way, let's jump into the asset themselves. All right, so the first category is background. In background, you have two types of background. You have the texture one, and you have gradients. So let's start by bringing here a texture background in our timeline. Each of those 5 texture backgrounds share exactly the same functionality, just they have different categories. So here we have black paper, fabric, old paper, stone, and white paper. For each of those 5 texture, you can choose different subtexture in those categories. So here, for example, we have old paper 1, 2, 3. So you can just toggle in between them and see exactly the right type of texture for you. Now, the texture background is not static, it's animated, and you get a continuous animation. So you can extend it for as long as you want, and the animation will just loop. Basically, it's switching the position of the background every couple of frames. So here, for example, with frame hold, we have the frame changing every 12 frames. So if you want to increase the speed of the animation, you can just reduce the frame hold. And if you want to decrease the speed of the animation, you can just increase the frame hold. Now, in terms of look, there is a bunch of different parameters that you can choose from. First, with color and blend mode, you can apply a color to your texture. So here, if you select on, it will just bring a solid color. Depending on the texture that you have, you might have just a solid, or it might already being applied properly with the vivid color. Sometimes it might not show right away. You might need to just like poke around a little bit before it's applied. You can adjust the gain right here to reduce the intensity, and also depending on the type of texture that you're using, you can switch around the blending mode. For example, generally with brighter tone, multiply tend to work better, and for dark tone, screen tend to work better, but it's just a general rule. Just play around with the blending mode until you get a look that satisfies you. Now we have the overall size and position, and the position of each of those frame movements. So for example, here, as you can see, we have frame placement number 1, and then it's moving. So frame placement number 2, and we can switch the position and side of each of those sections to get even more random animation. Now we can also adjust the contrast of that background here by adjusting the gain, the lift, the gamma, the contrast. So that can help you make some detail pop a bit more in your background, for example. Then we have also the ability to add a grid. So here the opacity of the grid by default is at 0, but you can increase that all the way to 1. And that grid will basically take a bit of the texture from the background, and you can adjust that here with the refraction. So as you're adjusting that refraction, the line gonna take a bit more the texture of the background. You can also adjust the size of that grid by having it smaller or bigger, and then there is some more adjustment to the line. You can have it fill, dash, and detail. And lastly, if that background is too bright, there is a dim and vignette parameter. So for example, here, if you are increasing the global dim, as you can see, your background can get darker. If you want to make your title pop a little bit more, that's really helpful to just like dim it. That way your title will stand out. You can also choose to have a vignette instead. So here by default, the vignette is at 1 in transparency. If you want to just bring it, you need to bring the transparency down to 0, and you can adjust the overall softness and the size of that vignette. Now there is also gradient background. So here I'm just going to drag that into our timeline, and it's the same thing. This gradient is animated, so it's a continuous animation throughout the length of the background. By default, there is some grain that is activated. If you want to have it smoother, you can remove that grain. You can choose the general color of the background, and then there is also the additional color that is generated in each of the corner, so you can choose those individually. Those backgrounds have been generated using a combination of effects like a fast noise, drip, and a vortex. Pretty much each parameter have a very strong effect, so you can just play around with them to just modify it as you want. And it shares the same logic as the other texture, with here the dimness, so you can increase the dimness to make your title pop a little bit more. Now for the next category, we get the chapter card, which I highly encourage you to use with background to help them stand out. So here, for example, let's bring number 04, and as you can see, the combination of the background and the title really work, in my opinion. Most of the chapter cards are pretty standard, meaning that you have control over the animation length in seconds. So right now by default it is 2 seconds, but if you want to increase that to 1 second, you can do so. So now, as you can see, the animation is a lot faster. You also have control over the animation style. So here, as you can see, it's panning right, but we could choose to have, for example, zoom in instead. And now, as you can see, the movement of the animation will be different. Now, in this specific title, we have a dual animation. There is a movement animation plus a follow animation on the word philosophy. So here, if I go over to text 1, philosophy, as you can see, we have order. So that's basically the order in which the letters are coming into place. So right now by default it's left to right, but we could choose, for example, here to have inside out. And as you can see, the letters are gonna come from the inside to the outside. So you can combine those different styles to really customize the animation as you want. For the movement of the animation, as you can see here, we have animation intensity. So right now the movement is quite subtle, but if we want to have that movement being, increased, we can go here to, let's say, 0.5. And as you can see, the movement between the starting point and the ending point is going to be a lot more. So here, the more I increase that, basically, the more we're going to notice the movement of the animation. And if we decrease that, it's going to be a lot more subtle. So you have the same amount of control for the animation in and the animation out. For example, if you want the animation out to be faster or slower, you can do it independently from the animation in, and you can choose also the style. So if you want it to come, let's say, from pan left, and then you want the animation out, go to pan right, well, you can do so with it coming here on pan right and then leaving on pan left. In terms of design customization, pretty much all of the assets in this pack share a similar build. You will have a size and position, which give you the ability to just replace the title wherever you want and adjust the global size of that title. Then in the text section, you can adjust the text to whatever you want, and you can choose the font to whatever font you have on your system. You can also choose the color. Now you can choose the type to be point or text box. This is fairly handy when you are working with a paragraph. So generally when it's only one line, it's going to be point, and when it's a paragraph, it's going to be text box. That allows you to have the text being bound to a box. So here, if you go over to Fusion and you select Fusion Overlay, as you can see now, we have a text box appearing, and if we're reducing that text box, the text is shrinking because it's staying within the bound of that box. You can also generally move the text individually as well as the size individually. You have the tracking, the line spacing, the anchoring as well. Also, you will notice that you still have access to all of the keyframe on all of the parameters. So if you want to create additional animation within the title, you can do so. For example, here we have the parameter right on. We could just drop a keyframe here and then move a couple frames forward and reduce that. That way we have our general animation, and then we could just like delete something or add something, for example. And then finally, you get the shading tab with different presets that are built in. So right now, the first one is the solid text. You could, switch it to being an outline. You can change the color, the thickness, etc. But you can also just deactivate that. And then here, select the text outline with already the preset made. You have also a text box that you can select, and that text box is gonna automatically adapt to whatever text you're adding up. So right now, as you can see, it has adapted. I can change the color of that text box, horizontal, the vertical, rounded corner or not. Anyway, I'll let you explore everything that you can do with each of those tab elements. There is a text box outline instead of the box. So right here, you also have a top line, we have a bottom line, and then there is a text shadow to help your text pop if you want to use that. And there is also a text glow. So it's the same thing for text 2 and text 3 and pretty much any text section inside of the pack. So most of the chapter cards are pretty standard like this, but some are gonna have some specific functionality. For example, this one, as you can see, is an entire card, meaning that you're gonna have a loader to load your own image, because we are using here an exclusion title to create that kind of like X-ray effect. So here we have the usual text section, as we've just saw before, and then here we have an image section where you can add your own image from your computer. So here you can just bring whatever image and then load it in, and as you can see, we can have that X-ray effect being applied. One quick note about loaders. There is sometimes weird bugs with Davinci basically loading entire section. Davinci basically treats, for example, multiple files that are in the same folder that are named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as like the same composition. So to use those kind of loaders, generally you need to use a media that is not in the folder with files that are sequential, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I would recommend to just like, you know, copy and paste that in your project file in like an extra folder and then load it right here. Now the third category is typography, and it's probably the biggest. It contains over 30 titles directly in it, and they pretty much share most of the same functionality, except there is a few that have some interesting displacement effect built in. So let's start here with typography number 2, and I'm going to drag that directly here in my timeline. So here, if we play it, as you can see, we have an interesting paper style animation, and then there is a continuous animation on the box outline and on the text directly. So here the text share the same functionality as we've seen before, but there is an additional texture 1 and texture 2 for each of those texts. That refers to the border here of that box, as well as the deformation right here of the text itself. So you can control the speed here of the displaced animation with the frame hold. You also have the ability to choose between different infill textures. So here we have a solid by default, which you can change the color of, and you can also select to have here a paper texture, plastic, blackboard, and you can apply a tint to that infill texture. So here, if we select on, as you can see now, we have a red being applied to our texture, and that will be the case for any new texture that we are bringing in. It will just take the texture plus the tint added to it. You can also adjust, for example, the lift and the contrast. If the texture for whatever reason doesn't show up great, you can here adjust the gamma and bring, for example, the midtone back up a little bit. And then we have the border control. So here you can choose between a different type of border as well. We have the fast noise that you can then control here with the detail scale and the contour scale to basically increase the intensity of the effect. But you can also choose between some preset like smooth or grainy, and you can then readjust the intensity of those effects on the border of the frame and on the text. So here we have the border displays. We can adjust the refraction right here. And as you can see, as I'm reducing that, we're adjusting the X refraction. And then if we're adjusting here the Y refraction, it's going to be on the vertical axis. Sometimes, depending on the font that you are using, it might not be perfectly center with the box. So all you have to do is go back here to the text 1, then go to the text box, and you can adjust the offset of that box to just place it properly aligned with the text. What is interesting with this is that you can really combine multiple texture with those two lines, for example, to get something that is quite interesting. So there is quite a wide range of title within that typography section. We have a single word, just a couple of lines, and we also have some longer composition here, for example, with paragraph. So as I've mentioned earlier, paragraph in terms of position are slightly different than single text. So here we have this one, for example, with all the line coming one by one. If I open text 2 right here to see that paragraph, as you can see here, the type is in text box and not in point. If here I'm selecting Fusion Overlay, we can adjust the size of that box right here, and that will basically dictate the way the layout of that paragraph is looking. But you can also choose to just switch to point and making the breaking of the line as you want. By here, for example, going to the line and just adding a space every time. But that's why the text box is generally more convenient, is because it's just doing that automatically for you. Now for the next category, we have clean motion, which is basically some simple title that you can combine to emphasize certain sentences said in your voiceover or videos. And they basically have a bunch of different type of animation, and you can just stack them up. So here I would start with focus, for example. And if I want to say something like I edit in Davinci Resolve, well, we can start here with I edit. I'm gonna then place it right there. Let's say adjusting the size. We can take, for example, here a flicker one. I'm gonna change that text to in. And then for Davinci Resolve, I'm gonna take one that is more stylized. So here I'm gonna take this one and we're gonna replace it here with Davinci Resolve. Reduce the size, maybe change the font to have like a different emphasis. So here I'm gonna select, let's say, a time. And so that way you could create like a composition that is time on the voiceover that you're saying. For example, if I'm doing a voiceover saying like, so I edit in Davinci Resolve, here we go, you have that being emphasis. Obviously right now I didn't take great time to lay out everything properly and to adjust the right font, etc. But you get the idea. You can use different title in this section to create your own composition. You have some letter by letter, you have some word by word. There is some that have texture, some that don't have texture. So here, for example, if I take motion 11, you can choose between different type of texture within the text. So here we have newspaper, we have paper grain, we have money, and you can adjust that refraction. So here, if you want to decrease the amount of texture, you can do so right here with the refraction. You can increase or decrease the size, so on and so forth. So there is really a lot that you can customize with those. Also in Clean Motion, you have an icon loader. So here you can have that flicker icon, and there is over 2,000 icon categories that you can choose from right here. So you can just select whatever you're looking for. For example, here we can search for heart if we want to have a heart, and then we will have a bunch of different heart to select from. You can also adjust the glow, and you can load your own icon if you want. So here you have a loader, and you can just load whatever file you have on your computer. Now the fifth category is pointers, and you have 10 different pointers that you can choose from. They are pretty straightforward and easy to use. Here, for example, if we start with rectangular one and we play it, as you can see, we have that rectangle that can help you emphasize something in your video. You can here, by selecting it, choose a couple of different things in terms of the animation, specifically for those ones. So right now the animation is both on the width and the height, but we could choose to have, for example, only the width. Or right there, only the height. You can adjust the size of that pointer. So here, if we reduce that, for example, we can have something that is a bit more squarish, and then we can adjust the position to just highlight specifically what we want. You have then control over more stuff here in rectangle. So we have the border, so you can choose to remove completely the border to have only a fill shape, or something here, removing completely the fill shape to have only the border. You can also adjust the soft edge of that border, and you can adjust the border width. Then down below here in color, you can choose the color of the border, and you can choose the color of the fill. You have different style you can choose from. So here we have that rectangle that is pretty clean, but we can also have something that look like it's been drawn onto your frame. And there is some also that have continuous animation. For example, if we take number 3 right here, basically it got a continuous animation rotating, and we can choose the number of slide to have something closer to a circle or something closer to a square. You can adjust the opacity. So basically here, if we were to reduce the opacity, select, let's say, a red color, and then adjusting the position by using the offset this time, we can really shape it any way we want. So here, for example, I'm creating some sort of diamond shape, and that diamond shape will then be rotating. So using a combination of those different pointers can really help you emphasize a certain part of your composition. Now the next category is loaders. So here you have 11 loaders that you can choose from. Some will have static frame, like for example, this one. Here we have the usual animation in and animation out. You can choose again between different type of animation, and we'll have the frame. You can swap that frame for whatever frame you find online as a PNG, and you can just use that as a border for the image that you are loading right here through the loader. Inside that frame, you can then adjust the overall size of the image and replace that properly to fit exactly the frame based on your image. Some other loader will have a slight animation that is continuous. For example, that's the case for this one right here, where we have the border of the frame being animated. So here we have a displacement on the border of the frame, and it will be continuously animated. I don't know if we can notice it. It's pretty subtle. So here, if I'm zooming 200, and we can see the border of that frame here just being slightly animated. So that can help the entire loader to feel a bit more premium and the animation to look nicer. We have something similar right here with that paper type of effect, where we have some edges that are being animated all around our image. Across the back, again, for the texture, you will encounter similar type of parameter sections. So here with the inside texture control, the border control, and the border displays. Now for the next category, we have time and date, which are simple title that just have been made specifically to display time and date, but you can use them to display anything else. It's just that the placeholder is generally made for displaying time and date. But here, for example, we could use that section and replace it with whatever we want. So here we can have whatever text, Davinci Resolve. So you can basically use them for multiple kind of purpose. But for example, some design like time and date 10 are really made structurally to display a date, because here we have the number and the day. So you could switch that, for example, for the month and the date of the month. In terms of functionality, that's pretty classic. That's exactly the same thing as in typography, so I'm not going to go over it again. Now we are entering into sections that are a bit more heavy to play. So we have a list, timeline, infographic, and composition. Let's start right now with a list. So lists contain 8 different lists that you can choose from. Let's start right now by bringing a list number 3 and bringing it in our timeline. We can extend that list to whatever length we want. Here in the inspector, we can choose the number of points that we want to display. So here, for example, we can switch from 5 to 3. We can also adjust the spacing between each of the points by increasing or decreasing that. As you can see now, we have equal spacing between each of the points, which allow you to keep a good balance with the title. And then there is an extra functionality for the list, which allow you to bring either the point all at once. Like right now, each of the points are coming into place. But then if we want to have extra point being added after, what we can do is here, for example, making a cut. On my second title that has been cut, right here, I'm going to switch the animation from pan left to none, and then switch from all at once to individual. And then here, because before we had 3 points coming up, on this one, I'm going to add the 4th one. So I'm going to select point count at 4. And now we have basically at the end of that section of 3 points. And then at the start of this title, the 4th point is going to come into place. So as you can see, those are pretty heavy to run because of all the functionality built in those titles. If we open here in Fusion, you'll notice that the node tree are pretty complex, which allow us to create those kind of flexible assets, but obviously it comes at a cost and they are harder to play back. But again, if you let it run with here, the run to cache in smart, now we can just play it without any issue and we will not drop any frames. So now we have all points coming up and then we have the 4th one that is added. Additionally, for something like that, what I would recommend is here, because there is more stuff that needs to be animated, it's fine to have the animation being longer, but then for your point that is added individually, I would recommend to increase the animation speed, for example, to 1 second. That way it's just going to happen faster and you're going to have your animation look a little bit better, in my opinion. For this specific list, you can adjust the icon. So you can load any icon you want. You can change the color of that icon. The text parameter gonna share the same functionality as any text inside of the pack. And then here, additionally, you can adjust the individual position of each of the section, whether they are grouped together. For example, here, if you're adjusting the position of that first section, it's gonna adjust the headline of each of the section altogether. And same thing go for text 2. Here, if you're adjusting that, it's going to adjust all of the section together. The reason for that is that it needs to all move together in order to easily being able to adjust the point spacing. Then the next category is timeline, and basically it shares similarity to a list, but on a horizontal axis. So for example, here, if I drag timeline number 1, we're gonna have the entirety of the title coming together with the main title and then the first branch. Now, if we need to create a new branch, what we can do is simply here duplicate our first initial title by holding Option and then dragging the title above on a second track. And now just here in the inspector, switching that title from on to off, and I will basically remove here that main title and keeping only the branch. So now we will have the first one coming into place, and then we're gonna have the second branch with only the branch. Now we can adjust the position. For example, here, if I want to have it coming at the bottom, I can just select bottom and it will be flipped down, and then we can move it forward in that timeline. Doing this again allow you to bring each point one by one at whatever length you want. So for example, if you are spending 1 minute in your voiceover talking about a specific point, then you can just bring that, 1 minute later with your second branch. You can load whatever image you want. You can choose the color of the background of that image, and then the usual control for the titles. Now, the next category is infographics, and there is 10 different infographics that you can choose from. There is some contours, there is some bar chart, some graph chart, etc. So here I'm gonna start, for example, with the icon contour. I'm gonna drag that here in the timeline, and here this one has a bunch of functionality, including the ability to switch the icon to a list of predefined icon, but you can also load your own icon. So here in the icon section, again, you have a loader. You can then choose the color of that icon. And then here for the contour animation, you can control the suffix and the prefix. So for example, here, instead, if we want to have $, at the beginning, we can easily do that right here. You can then adjust whatever number you want to be displayed. So here, if we want it to be, for example, percentages, we will do 70 instead, delete the $, and then add a percentage sign right here as a suffix. Then if I take that pie chart example, same logic from the thing that we've seen before. You can choose the number of points. So right now you have basically the chart being divided in 5 parts. You can choose to have only 3, for example. And then here in partition line, you can adjust the line angle to just rearrange the percentages in which this is split. You can then adjust the callout line. As you can see, it's going to be rotating around the chart. But for example, if it's tilting and you don't want the text to be tilted, then you can go over here to call out text, and now you can readjust the angle of that text to straighten it. Now, for example, if I take a bar chart and drag it in, we can do the same thing here and choose, for example, only 3 points, and adjust the bar spacing to have everything spaced evenly. You can then choose the scale of each of those bars by reducing or increasing them. And then finally, the last category is composition. So it's some more complex composition reusing some of the assets inside of the pack. So for example, we have that very cool opening card right here, which use a loader to create some depth with different images. You can change those coins right here, again, in images, and you can adjust the strength of the blur on each of the individual coin. So here, for example, if I'm adjusting the strength, as you can see right now, there is no blur. And if I increase it to the maximum, we can not really read anything on that coin. So you can do that for each of the specific coin and adjust the blur to your liking. Again, those titles are reusing the assets that are available throughout the pack. So it just gives you a quick and easy way to have already great looking composition and giving you idea on how you can combine different elements and different assets to really create more complex composition starting from basic titles. And now the last category in this pack are the effect that you're gonna find in the effect section, not in title. So here you can go to effect, visit the studio, and then scroll where you're gonna find the history pack. There is 15 different type of effect that you can choose from. I'm not gonna present all of them to you. I'm planning on doing another video where I'm going a bit more in depth into the effect and how to use them in combination with the title to create interesting compositions. But here, let me show you a few of them using this statue on a transparent background to give you an idea of what you could do with them. So for example, here we have an animation in and out. So I can then just drag any effect directly onto the clip that I want that effect to be applied. And then here that will be giving you controlled animation. So now if I play it, as you can see, we have that image coming as a zoom in, but we could have it coming as, let's say, slide up right there. We can adjust the timing of that animation again here by selecting, let's say, 2. So it's basically the same logic as any of a title, just it's an effect that can be applied to any media to basically gain those property. And it has the same functionality right here on the animation out. Now, another effect here would be an animation blink in and out. You can control the animation in and out being on or off. Then we have a continuous animation. So that will be a continuous zoom in animation. So you can choose to have it zooming in or zooming out. There is already a great way to do that directly in Davinci Resolve using dynamic zoom, but sometimes in some instances that can come handy when you want to have everything available directly here on the effect tab and not having to bounce between tab. Now, another effect that is quite helpful is here defocus. So if you want to defocus whatever composition you have in the background, you can just drag that, for example, here on that background, and it will create a defocus animation right here to help whatever you have in front stand out. You can then adjust the specificity of the animation as well as the blur strength. For example, if you wanted to have it a lot stronger, you can do that right here. Now we have the same logic for the dimmer background, for example, but this time it shouldn't be applied on the background of the composition, but directly on the thing that is in the foreground. So here, if I apply the dimmer background to a media or to a title, for example, you will have automatically a dimmer that's going to help your title stand out. You can then choose the opacity of that dimmer. You can choose to have an animation or no animation, and you can do more specific stuff here by, for example, inverting it and then, creating a shape with it. So that can be a very interesting tool to help you make stuff stand out. We also have a focus pointer to emphasis on some things. So here, if I drag it here, we can choose between different shapes. So here we have rectangle and circle. We can choose to have the background being a blur or being a specific color. You can then obviously adjust the position of that pointer here. If we want to emphasize on certain things, we can adjust the border of that pointer. We can adjust the overall width, the color, so on and so forth. We also have a glow. So here, if you drag that onto a title or a composition, it's just going to make the entire thing glow. We have a LED screen texture. So here, as you can see, it's applying on the entire frame some kind of like LED style look. You can choose the blur. You can choose the strength of the effect by adjusting the blend of that effect, the size of the LED. So you can increase that to have stronger LED or reduce it to have stuff that is a bit more subtle and that creating a bit of aliasing right here. We have a levitation effect. So that can help you to make the composition more interesting by having the effect levitating. Right now, we might need to adjust the speed scale to reduce that a little bit more. So it feels a bit more like it's floating right here. That was a bit intense. I'm probably going to change that by default. But here, as you can see now, all media feel like it's floating. You can apply again all of those effects directly onto title. So that's going to be a great way to make them more interesting if there is some stuff that are lacking in your opinion. We can also adjust the motion scale if we want to have the motion, being bigger or being smaller. And as you can see, there is so many micro adjustments that you can do to reach the look that you want. Then we have a highlighter effect that you can use here directly on a clip. You can then adjust the overall height, width, and position of that highlighter. So here I'm just going to increase the width, for example, and now it can just highlight a text, you can also add that highlighter to an adjustment clip. That way you can combine multiple of them. So here, if I were to take an adjustment clip right here and would like to have like a second highlight coming up, well, what I could do is here simply go back again to the line highlighter, just drag that in and do the same thing, adjusting the overall length, height and position to highlight the other thing. And now we're gonna have the first one coming up and then the second one coming up. So you can just combine those as much as you want. We also have a shadow effect that you can drag here on a media or a title to create a subtle shadow behind it. We also have a split screen. In that case here, if you apply the split screen to any media, now basically anything that's going to be under it going to be visible. So here you could just use that to display, for example, 2 pictures. Then we have tint and texture. If you take that and drag it onto a media, it will just being applied to the entire frame, and it will give basically texture to whatever it's been applied to, as well as a tint. You can choose the texture, between different pre-selected parameter right here. And you can adjust the color, you can adjust the overall blend of that color, and overall blend of the texture as well. Then we have vignette focus blur. When apply, is basically gonna blur the edges right here of the media it's been applied to. That can be great to just recenter the focus on the center of your frame. Same thing go here for vintage frame. If you apply that to your clip, you're just gonna create here a vintage frame that can help you to recenter the action right there. It's great sometimes to use them in combination. As you can see here, it's creating both the blur and then the frame. So that can be just like a very interesting effect to apply. And you have an animated dust also to create that vintage look. And that's pretty much it. That was a really long video. There's a lot of stuff to cover in this. Thank you so much for sticking with me if you're still watching right now. This is probably our most functional pack up to date with the most asset, the most interesting feature, I think. So thank you so much for checking it out. And please let me know in the comment what we should create next, as well as what you think about this pack and what potentially could be improved for our next project. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Speed up your workflow and create better videos using the pack available on our website, including titles, transition, and templates built only for Davinci Resolve. Get started today by downloading our free starter pack that contains over 150 elements. Link in the description below or at videoeditorstudio.com.